Welcome to Self-Centered Living, a podcast that serves as a vital platform for women of color across cultures and backgrounds to take charge of our narratives and where our voices are centered. I'm your host, Trish, and here we delve into our diverse experiences and rich humanity through a blend of personal stories and insightful discussions with a range of guests. Our aim is to foster meaningful connections and understanding among our listeners. This season, we're exploring the scripts that shape us, the ones we inherited, the ones that were imposed, and the ones that want to emerge when we can finally see them. A quick note about today's episode. If you've been with me across the season, this conversation may sound a little different, and that tracks with where my guest is in her life right now. The scripts are still being written, and the ones already written, well, that's the exploration. So you'll hear looking back and a lot more getting present to what is and discovering out loud. Today, I'm fortunate to be chatting with Amelia Santiani. Welcome to Self-Centered Living.
Thank you for having me.
How would you introduce yourself to someone meeting you for the first time? Not your resume, but who you are right now.
Well, I'm Amelia. I'm currently living in Mexico City. I just graduated from college, so I'm still trying to figure out everything about me, especially in this new context. From what I know right now, I'm someone who tries to be a friend to all. I'm someone who definitely tries to find the joy in life. I love to dance, I love to read, and I love to experience new things.
Tell me about your family.
Well, I have one sister. She's younger than me, 20 months younger than me, so not too much of a gap. We were raised by our mom and our dad. My mom is a lawyer. She immigrated from the Dominican Republic when she was 11. She's worked as a lawyer my entire life. My dad is a stay-at-home dad. He initially worked as a financial analyst, but when I was maybe 2, he decided to stay home and hang out with me and my sister. I was raised in Wallingford, Pennsylvania, which is a small town outside of Philadelphia.
What was it like growing up in Wallingford?
I loved it. It was a beautiful place to live. I was always surrounded by nature. It was an idyllic suburban childhood, honestly. My next door neighbor, right across the street, her name was Philan. We were best friends. Literally, from when I was born to when I moved to Princeton, we hung out every single day. We walked to school together. It was just so fortunate. I was, as I mentioned, raised by my dad. Primarily, my mom was pretty frequently on business trips. At one point, she worked in Washington, D.C. I think that really formed a lot of my life and a lot of my identity. My dad is just from Philadelphia. He's just American. That was a big staple of my life. I lacked a lot of the Dominican identity that maybe I would have gotten had my mom stayed at home and my dad went off to work. That, in addition to the demographics of where I lived, Wallingford, I checked a while ago. I think it's like maybe 92% white. I swear that me and my mom and my sister were the only Latina people in the whole town. I mean, it's like 2000. So it was really interesting. I really think that and my dad being the one who stayed at home with me all the time, the Dominican aspect of my identity was sort of shut off from me, but not in any negative way. I just didn't understand it at all. Of course, I went to the Dominican Republic yearly, basically. I spent summers there occasionally, but I think day-to-day life and how that formed my identity, I really just thought I was a white girl.
I want to take up for your dad a bit because you were like, he's just American. Yeah, he's American, not just American. You're
True.
funny. He has a last name Santiani. What is his heritage?
His dad
Mhm.
or my great grandfather immigrated from Italy. My grandfather was half Italian, half Albanian. My grandma, I think, is maybe French and English. On my grandmother's side, they've been in the United States for so long. Someone on my
Right.
grandmother's side like fought in the Civil War for the Union. Technically first generation American on my mom's side, and then also have this like very extensive history and these extensive roots in the United States on my dad's side. It's like an interesting dichotomy.
I love it. When did you move to Princeton?
I moved to Princeton when I was 13, so starting 8th grade.
Coming out of middle school.
Yeah.
Well, you're in last year of middle school. What was your schooling like in Wallingford?
I went to just the public school, maybe a 15-minute walk from my house, and, it's just normal. I mean, good quality school.
You went to an Ivy University. Was it established then that you would be on that track?
My parents never really forced me. I've always been someone who was very curious, who really loved to learn. I've always loved to read. I really enjoyed school. At that time in my life, I thought that I was going to be a professional ballerina. My mom went to really good schools. I think knowing that maybe guided me in a way, but never did I ever experience any pressure, especially that young, from my parents at all.
What was your relationship like with your sister? Did you take on a customary elderly sister role?
In ways, we both did ballet and her feet are flat. So I would always try to train her and be like, you got to point your feet, things like that. We would do things together. We would make little movies with our neighbors. It was a lot of fun. We had a good relationship in our childhood, but never like sister besties.
And then with your parents, how are their personalities in comparison to you, or maybe even each other?
I definitely think I'm like more of my dad in outward ways. My dad is very boisterous and like eccentric and extroverted and is so talkative. Me and my next door neighbor who were best friends, whenever I was at her house and my dad came, we knew that we would have another 45 minutes consistent because he would be talking to her parents. This was across the board, actually. Whenever I went to hang out with anyone, I knew that there would always be 45 extra minutes after my dad came to pick me up. Very talkative, very friendly. My mom, she's definitely full of life as well, but she's a more serious person. She's very smart, but is also very fun. But my dad, to anyone on the street, will start up a conversation and be laughing and making jokes. Whereas my mom, I don't think she's as much like that. I'm like my dad in the sense that I love to talk, I love to have fun, I love to connect with people. I'm like my mom in sort of my interests. We think very similarly. I think we have similar brains as well. And
When you think about how you function on a daily basis and how you make decisions, what's operating that's from your parents, if anything?
that's a great question. Honestly, I think on the decision side, my mom has total influence over me. As I said, she's a lawyer and it's very clear in anything, any advice that she gives. If I say I'm going to do anything, she's like, but what if this happens? And what if this happens? And what if this happens? Even though it definitely annoyed me when I was younger, because you never want to think about a contingency plan or any repercussions. Now, when I make decisions, I see that influence in my thought process. I'm always thinking of every factor. Yeah, honestly, I feel like my mom almost totally influences how I make decisions now.
What's an example of a recent decision you made where she was creeping in?
We're coordinating a trip in a week. I think that every logistical decision I've been considering a contingency plan, things like that. Definitely. She's
Okay.
affected me.
They have different paths. Your mom, as an attorney, as you said, business attorney, traveling quite a bit away for work, and then your dad being stay at home. When you look at both of those paths, how does it inform who you believe you can be in the world or how you show up in the world?
I've honestly been thinking about this a lot just in terms of my career and having a family. I think that it's definitely given me the example of me being the breadwinner, quote unquote, and me being the working parent. Because honestly, I can't even imagine. It's just hard for me to imagine me staying at home and becoming a stay at home mom. I would just think that that's what my husband would do because that's what I saw in my life and how I was raised. It's just really hard for me to even imagine that not being me not being the one who's working, and my husband not being the one who's staying at home just because of how I was raised. It definitely informed me in a very one-to-one way.
And that's interesting. I don't know if you're aware of it, but certainly when I was growing up, if there was an expectation, and it wasn't what my parents planted in me, but if there was an expectation that anyone would be at home, it would be the woman.
Yeah.
Well, you're probably seeing that now, given the current landscape. People reference the 1950s, where women were supposed to be at home, how you grew up. It pushes against tradition.
Yeah. And
Not necessarily yours or your family's, but when we look at the I guess, broader collective, it's interesting to see how that shaped you because that's gonna shape everything else, even dating.
yeah, I was in a politics of development class, and I remember reading a article about wage differences in relationships and how if the woman makes more, a lot of times it spawns resentment in the man. I was like, what? I was actually but yeah, no, it definitely, yeah, it's honestly guided me and influenced me in very interesting ways. It's influenced how I think about my future and my family as well.
You said you were like, "What? Why?" Feels
Resent.
resentment, and you were surprised by that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so opposite from my experience. My dad doesn't make any money. It's all my mom, and there's never been any kind of resentment that I could detect, and definitely not. My dad, they both made this decision for him to stay at home. He very much so embraced it and was an incredible, incredible father and caregiver. The fact that that's not normal, I mean, obviously it's not normal, but it's shocking to me that it's not a little more normal than it is. And that these things like these wage gaps can still cause resentment even today in our supposedly more equal society. That just something that's so opposed to what I've seen in my life was shocking.
It also sounds like the relationship you have with your father or how he shows up in your life is counter that narrative as well.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit more?
Yeah, with my dad raising me, he really did everything. My mom, maybe when I was 4, 10, she was always on business trips to India, to who knows where. She was just always busy. She was grinding. My dad, he drove me to school every day. He drove me to ballet. He did my ballet bun every single day. He took me to get my ballet shoes, to get my leotards, to get everything. He was on top of it. He loves to cook. He's always cooked. My mom does not cook. And my mom knows how to cook Dominican food well, but my dad cooks the Dominican food. He always has. He was just a phenomenal dad and caregiver. And I'm so grateful that he was there and that my life ended up being like this. It was an incredible experience. He would drive me everywhere. We would walk to school together with my friend, my neighbor. It was an amazing experience to have him.
Because he chatted so much, sounds like emotionally you had that availability.
Yeah, me and my dad would be chatting. I mentioned this to you whenever we would be in the car together. The tangents he would go on were crazy. He would talk for the whole 30-minute car ride. I would really try to be paying attention and he would be talking about I use this example. He would be talking about the axles in the cars, and I would be like, okay, okay. And I would zone out, and I would feel so bad for zoning out. But there's only a certain level of attention that I have. He still does it. I came back from Ecuador. I was visiting my friend there, and he picked me up from the Philadelphia airport. Normally, I would just take the train from Newark, but there was like this whole debacle. I was so excited to be able to tell him all about my trip. He talked the whole hour in the car about a movie theater. I was like, Dad, please. I think that now I'm very chatty as well. And it definitely facilitated like a wonderful relationship as well. We would always be chatting. He always wanted to learn about my day, like what I was thinking. I think him being so talkative was also an incentive for me to be talked to him and allowed us to really bond.
I love that. With your mom coming to the US when she was 11, she speaks Spanish as well. Were you raised to speak Spanish?
Initially, yes, I did. I did speak Spanish until I was like 6. So, how much speaking was that really? I don't know. But I at least understood it to what I understand. But then I think, honestly, the combination of her not being there and me living in this predominantly white place with no other Latin people, and also my Dominican family not really being near me, all of those things combined, it just led me to like reject it. My mom would try to speak Spanish with me, and I'd be like, no, I don't want to speak that. That was something I really came to regret. Thankfully, now I can speak Spanish after many years of trying to learn. But yeah, until I was 19, maybe 20, I couldn't even have a meaningful conversation in Spanish.
I would also imagine, given the demographics where you were growing up, you go into a classroom or just with your friends, you don't want to stick out.
Yeah, definitely.
What changed from around 1920 that led you to speaking it again?
Like I had taken Spanish all throughout middle school and high school, but I don't know. I just was never incentivized to really like really try to learn it, even though like I would go visit my family in the Dominican Republic and we would not be able to speak to each other effectively because they can't speak English. And then I took a gap year and I like went to Puerto Rico. I was still not really like, oh, I gotta learn Spanish. I mean, I was thinking of majoring in English once I went to college. I got to college and my friend who I had met during COVID through Instagram, she was like, oh my God, audition for this Latin dance group with me. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I did, and I got in October of my freshman year. I was the social chair with her of this company, being really immersed in this company with all Latin people who all spoke Spanish and they would always be speaking in Spanish. I was like, oh God, this is embarrassing. I'm Dominican and I can't speak this language. That was a big catalyst for me wanting to learn it for real. At the same time, on my placement test for the Spanish for language, I was put into the intermediate Spanish class and I was like, this is so embarrassing. I was in that for 2 weeks. I was like, this is really easy. On the last possible day, I switched into the advanced class. And my professor, towards the end of the semester, was like, hey, you really should consider majoring in Spanish and Portuguese with the combination of interests that we're developing and the people I was hanging out with because of my dance group. I was like, wait, this is a perfect opportunity. And I majored in Spanish. Since then, I've still been learning, but I'm pretty much fluent now.
Look at that. Your mom's from DR. You went basically every summer,
Yeah.
but it wasn't until you were with peers, peer pressure is what made you gravitate to the language.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you took a gap year.
Mhm.
Gap years are still relatively new.
Oh,
What made you decide to take a gap year?
it was during COVID. I graduated high school in 2020 and I had gone to boarding school for the last 2 years of high school. It was very abrupt that we all had to leave. The difference between in person living on a campus learning and the Zoom was so drastic. I hated it. Then I'd gotten into college and they had said that we were going to come in person for the fall semester in August. I was like, okay, I'm going to go if we're going to be in person. And then in August, they were like, just kidding. Do not come to campus. No one's coming. You can request a deferral, but you're going to be put in a lottery. You could get a 1 year gap or a 2 year gap, and you had to request it in like 48 hours. Immediately, I was like, I cannot do this again. So I requested it and it was a very quick decision, but I just knew I couldn't handle another semester or year of COVID style learning.
Good for you. So when you did go to boarding school, part of that ended up being virtual or okay.
Yeah, the last 2 months or 3 months were virtual because we left in March, or we were still on spring break. We had a very early and long spring break from the end of February to mid March. March 13th was the day that we all heard, and that's also my birthday. It was my 18th birthday. It was crazy. They sent us an email that don't come back for preseason. I was very excited because I had to go back for soccer preseason. I was required to play soccer. I was not good at it. It was not my forte. Going back for preseason on my birthday, I was like, geez, this sucks. And then they sent the email, don't come. I was celebrating in my car. I was like, woo. We never returned to campus. We were Zoom learning for that portion of time.
Where was boarding school?
It was in Middletown, Delaware.
Again, the
Yeah.
demographics are
Yeah, but actually, that was the root of when I started to connect a little bit more with my Latin culture and heritage because it was way more diverse than my middle school and my other high school.
Huh?
My very best friend in the whole world who I met there is half Puerto Rican and half Black. And there were just many more Latina girls, and just meeting them and being in community with them was really, really transformative. That's the beginning of my transformation.
These institutions that you were in, certainly your boarding school was bringing you back to your roots. What were you learning about yourself?
I just feel like once I went to boarding school, which was for my junior and senior year, me being Dominican became something that I was tangibly interested in and understood before that. It was just some random fact about me. I vividly remember all of my friends in high school were white. It was hard to find anyone who wasn't white. They are either white or Asian. At Princeton High School, it was hard. I remember sitting in a circle with them on the ground for lunch because we all had to eat like in the hallway. And I was like, yeah, like I'm white too. And they were like, I wouldn't really consider you as a white person. I was like, what? Like, I just like, I like, I really didn't understand I really did not understand it. Even though I was like, also, I knew I was Dominican.
You and I are laughing, but I'm considering what that does to your sense of belonging. Having your identity reflected back to you, you saw yourself one way, they saw you differently.
I don't know. It was just very interesting how my environment like completely shaped the way that I understood my identity. After that, going to boarding school and being with Latina girls and seeing what that meant, I was like, wait a minute, I sort of get it now. I started to really understand more and also understood what being Dominican meant about me, not only in terms of like identity and cultural connection, but also like how I'm perceived and like ethnicity, which I think before that I hadn't understood at all. And then I also was taking like a Latin America history class and I was in like the Latin affinity group and just being friends with Latinas, that combination, I finally started to understand what being Dominican and being Latina like actually meant.
For listeners who cannot see you, Amelia has long, wavy hair. Certainly, I'm going to think that she's mixed with something. The fact that you found out in high school that you weren't white, which you are.
Yeah.
So you share multiple ethnicities, coming back to how certain environments teach us who we are or make assumptions about who we are. Or we make our own assumptions about who we are. Your identity is expanding. Now being in groups where there are other Latinas, what were you understanding about being Latina or of Dominican culture?
That's a great question. I mean, I began to understand the importance of connecting with it, whether through dance. We would always have this salsa social thing. I remember feeling so amazing during that time because of that, and also learning about Latin history. I really began to understand the importance of cultural connection and what that can make you feel. It made me feel really good and like made me feel really at home. That was something I learned. I wouldn't say I really learned much specifically about like being Dominican. I just think I learned more so the importance of cultural connection and the importance of trying to connect with my culture than specific things about being Dominican.
Did it help you understand your mother any differently or see her any differently?
It made me understand her life before having me a lot better. Her life as an immigrant and growing up in New York City, that really helped my view of her in a positive way and
Nice.
offered a lot of context. Also, it made me realize that I was the one who was limiting myself and she wasn't. In her attempts to teach me Spanish and expose me to the culture. She wasn't doing anything wrong. I was the one who was blocking that and in the wrong. That had me start to reapproach that relationship.
That's a big realization, taking ownership of that, not blaming the environment or your mom, but seeing your part in it. I love that. You take the gap year, you
Yeah.
spend time in Puerto Rico. Did that teach you anything about yourself? Anything new? Were you in Puerto Rico the whole year?
No, no. I
Okay.
was in Princeton for most of the year. And then I went to Puerto Rico for 5 weeks. Being there, I don't think it taught me much about my culture because obviously it's not my culture.
Was there anything that you learned about yourself?
Yeah, it was maybe the second longest stretch of time that I've spent without being with my family, the longest time that I've spent alone without being with friends and people my age. I was just there with the dad and the kid that I was nannying, and then friends of his. So it was this tiny municipality, an island municipality of Puerto Rico. We weren't even on the mainland, and there were very, very few people there. Being alone and not really having any kind of opportunity to make friends and just being with adults was honestly very important for me. Before that, I had been starting to like feel very comfortable being alone and being by myself, but only like from when I started nannying in August. Being in Puerto Rico with them made me more self-sufficient and taught me how to like make my own fun. I have always loved reading. I really read a lot there. I went on runs every day. I like walked around the island to explore it, learning how to be comfortable by myself and alone, so alone without any friends, even though I became friends with these 40-year-olds. No friends my age was very important. It allowed me to come into college more mature and more able to find my own way and be comfortable finding my own way alone.
How old was the child?
He was 7.
That's a great bridge before going off to university in terms of learning some responsibility and independence. You get to university. By now, you've already moved to the area of Princeton.
Yeah.
You're at university. What did you learn about yourself at university?
The most important thing that I learned about myself was that I was really into school. I loved writing and I was very capable. Learning that was very transformative for not only any academic perception I had of myself, but also my confidence that I had in me. Because before that, I had undiagnosed ADHD in high school that affected not only how I was in class, but also my ability to write and produce quality homework. I mean, I was obviously doing well in school, but I felt like I was always losing my track in writing and I wasn't that great at it. That was a big obstacle I felt going to college and starting writing seminar and being like, wait, I'm actually really good at this. It showed me the possibilities for myself are endless. Not only am I really good academically, but wow, there's nothing that can stop me and I can be good at whatever I set my mind to. That was the most important lesson because it just instilled in me a sense of self confidence that's so valuable.
ADHD, it sounds like it was the experience of it that gave you the perception that you might have been limited in writing.
Yeah.
Or was it something around the label of having it that made you feel, I'm probably not as good at this?
No, I didn't even know that I had it really. I've always been very high energy, funny, love to talk. It was just like normal, but I hated
Yeah.
doing schoolwork. You could actually not pay me to sit down and do my schoolwork. Before I had any kind of medicine or knew that I had it. In high school, my boarding school, on Sundays, everyone would go to the library and I'll do work. And I would go to the library, I would set up my spot, and then I would spend the entire day walking around the main hall trying to find people to talk to. It was crazy. Things were always much more difficult for me. It wasn't as satisfying to complete schoolwork in any way. And then going to Princeton after having been diagnosed, starting school there was just amazing. I like had never felt that way before with academics. It was like really eye-opening. So,
It wasn't that you weren't capable, your brain just processes differently. Once you had the support that matched how you were wired, everything opened up. You go to Princeton. Was there ever a time where you felt you were asked to be someone that you weren't or that came natural to you?
that's a great question. Yeah, definitely. But really, I think that I found like a Latino community very quickly, as I mentioned, just joining
Mhm.
this dance group. I've also always done ballet. Joining the two dance groups at the same time exposed like the dissonance in my life because I was feeling so like culturally at home, finally like rediscovering and reconnecting with myself and also like in a much more like Dominican specific way. With the Latin dance group, I would also like be going to this ballet group and I just felt much more like confined and like much less at home and much less accepted for like who I was because like that ballet is very uptight and you're not supposed to talk. There's a higher emphasis on conformity. The two side by side, I think I realized, whoa, ballet really has been something that has not been affirming culturally, I guess. I don't really look like a ballerina, not in terms of what I look like or also my body type. So I think that also I was like, wait, this isn't really an affirming space for me. So I definitely took a step back from that and went all in with the Latin group.
So you had both side by side, one that asked you to conform, one that affirmed who you are, and you made a choice.
But I would say that that is really the only time that I felt that way throughout college, thankfully. Otherwise, I definitely catered my academics towards my interests. In my first year writing seminar, our third essay, you chose whatever you wanted to write about. And I wrote this 20-page paper about the Trujillo dictatorship in the Dominican Republic and how the gender roles he established in the country throughout his time or his like administration are still present in like bachata songs today. That piqued this interest in the Dominican Republic academically for me. After that, I was able to sort of cater my experience in Princeton academically as well towards something that was very affirming culturally.
What are your parents making of all of this? how you've how you're changing, particularly on coming back to the Latina culture. If I'm your mother, watching my daughter come to the culture at a point where it's all you wanting to consume more or know more about it. Have you and her ever talked about that, or has there been any comments that she's made?
Obviously, she was noticing it. My sophomore year of college, I stayed in the DR for a month with my family because I just wanted to practice my Spanish. I
Yeah.
definitely think she realized that I was trying to really culturally connect. She let me do it independently, and I was able to. I became really close with my family in the Dominican Republic and all independently, like you said. So I think it definitely makes her happy.
Now you're in Mexico City. This is post graduation,
Yeah.
almost coming up on that year. How has it been in Mexico City? What kind of work are you doing?
I'm working with a nonprofit that supports high impact entrepreneurs in Mexico City or Mexican entrepreneurs in general. It's part of a global organization. I'm working really specifically with the entrepreneurs. I'm on the entrepreneur experience team. I'm doing a lot of selection work and looking into possible entrepreneurs that could join our network. I'm sort of into this businessy side of things, but I think honestly, like the startup part of it and the startup vibe's very distinct and it's not necessarily my favorite thing, but I find it very enjoyable and rewarding. In Mexico, honestly, I would have like these little crises when I first got here because my fellowship also had placements in the Dominican Republic, and I had interviewed for the Dominican Republic placements, but I'd gotten the offer to come to Mexico before I had even interviewed in one of the Dominican Republic ones. And I was like, I gotta take this. Like, the Dominicans say, like, más vale un pájaro en la mano, like to say what you have in your hand, you should take it instead of waiting to see what could possibly happen. And I didn't want to be left stranded. And also, I thought that my job now was much more aligned with my career goals. But because of that, I definitely had to sacrifice an entire year that I could have had in the Dominican Republic and really connecting with my culture. So I was having these breakdowns and be like, oh my God, like, why did I come to Mexico? I could have just gone to the Dominican Republic. After a little while, I stopped being so worried about it because I realized that it doesn't really matter. I'm always going to have the DR. And it's nice that I really get to experience a new place. Also, this city is exploding in popularity. It's like the most amazing, amazing city in the world. So I am very comfortable with my choice. But at the beginning, I was like, what am I doing in Mexico? Now I'm happy with my decision.
What was the saying you said in Spanish just now, the DR saying?
Más vale un pájaro en la mano.
Where'd you get that from? Who'd you hear saying it?
My mom, she always says
I love it.
she always says that. It's like, I don't know the rest of it. It's like a bird in the hand is worth more than 100 flying.
Here it was, you were like, "Oh, I'm in Mexico City when I could be in DR," and worried about being away from the culture, but it's in you. The way that you just rolled off that saying.
Yeah, I
The
agree. Like,
fluency. You're now preparing for the LSAT,
yeah.
which I'm sure your mom is very proud or excited about.
Yeah.
You laugh, why?
She's definitely never pressured me to do anything. This is all of my own accord, but we talk about it sometimes and it's clear that she has very strong opinions about it as well. She wants me to become a law clerk. I'm not sure if I want to clerk, even though it's very prestigious. It's hard and you don't make a lot of money. And I'm going to be in a lot of debt. So I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? And then she'll be like, you're going to be the next president of Princeton University.
She's not saying you must, but the aspirations are there. Clerkship, president of Princeton, and you're pushing back, not rejecting her, but sounds like you already have a sense of what direction you want to go in.
I'm I definitely see myself as a lawyer. My mom does think that I can take it in September, which I sort of agree with, but I'm not in a rush because I have a job that I need to be in for 2 years. I'm thinking of applying September 2027. Maybe my mom is in more of a rush for me. Besides that, in terms of the career, I think that I think that she understands what I want to do. She's fully supportive of it. I think she's like really pro clerkship because of the prestige, which I totally understand. But I definitely discovered the path in law that I want to take sort of alone. I mean, it was with the help of speaking with her friends. My mom did white collar criminal defense litigation, and I want to be a corporate attorney. I don't even want to litigate. I want to work in Latin America and do deals in Latin America. My mom is like very, very supportive of that. Besides her being an attorney and like introducing me to the possibility of being an attorney, it's been guided by my own interests. I honestly feel like I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was very young. It hasn't been like an explicit influence, but more of like something implicit.
When you say very young, how young?
Maybe when I was 10 or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
What was it that made you say at 10 or so, I want to be an attorney?
this is like so basic, and I don't even want to be a litigator, so it's not really applicable to my life anymore. I just liked debate. My mom was like, you like to argue, and then people would be like, oh, you're like a lawyer, and I'd be like, then I'll be a lawyer.
You say it's basic, but I've heard that before. Another person that I spoke to last season, she's on the attorney track as well. She came to understand that she wanted to be an attorney through debate.
Yeah.
She was told that she was very good at it, and then the additional passion of the type of specialty that she'll be in drove it. Okay. You're in this in between time. You're not in a hurry to take the LSAT, but you will take it.
Yeah.
You know this is your track. You have 2 years in your current role. What is the space between coming out of university and before your next step? What has that allowed for?
This year has definitely allowed me to sort of take a step back. My job that I'm going to be working starting June, it's going to be quite intense. There's going to be a lot of overtime and just very, very much of like a grind set. You're going to be working a lot, like the New York vibe. And I think that this year, being in Mexico and doing a job that's like much more relaxed, it's not an environment in which I feel like I'm always being evaluated and I need to be outperforming everyone. Obviously, I'm aspiring to be producing great work and contributing meaningfully to the organization. But I've had a lot more free time than I've anticipated. That has definitely allowed me to slow down, take a step back, be able to plan out my future in a way that I never was able to at Princeton because I just felt like I was constantly being consumed by independent essays, independent work. Also, being thrust into this new city where I knew basically no one except for eventually meeting the whole cohort of Fulbright grantees, that some of whom work in my company. I really had to, again, like during my gap year, learn how to enjoy myself alone and make the most of my time alone, but also find interests and learn how to navigate a city I had never known about beforehand. Both of those aspects of this experience have been really, really rewarding and incredible. And I'm going to miss Mexico City a lot, but good things always have to end. So that's how I'm coping with it.
What has surprised you most about yourself during this time?
What has surprised me in a disappointing way, in a constructively disappointing way, is I was surprisingly shy. I'm always so worried about messing up in my Spanish. And there's a whole other layer to it because I have a Dominican accent. I look Dominican, I look Latina. So I always am overthinking that and being like, oh my God, they're going to know I don't know Spanish as well as I should or something, even though no one ever actually thinks that. And yeah, it was very nerve wracking for me to speak to people, speak to random people. Now I'm better at it, but I'm still definitely working on it in a positive way. I'm surprised about my adaptability again. I mean, I think I consider myself an adaptable person, but I think you don't really know if you're adaptable until you move to a country that is not the United States and not Europe. So,
And still not your first language.
yeah,
So there's that. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? What are you gonna feel 5 years from now?
I think I'm gonna I think I'm gonna feel like the world is in front of me, honestly, or like I have my life ahead of me in a different way. I mean, I feel like right now, I feel like that in the sense of like everything is very, very exploratory. I'm learning new things all the time. In 5 years, I think it's gonna feel like that, but in a more career oriented way. I'll hopefully feel very established where I am and I have roots where I am because that's another thing of like moving to a new place where you don't have really any connections. So you're making these new relationships and it's beautiful in its own right. But being away from the place where all of my friends are, friends that I've known for years, has been sad occasionally. And I'm excited to feel like I'm in a place where I have deep roots and deep community in 5 years.
In the conversation that we're having, is there anything that surprised you?
Hmm. Talking about how I started to identify with being Dominican again, that's always surprising to me. I always remember little details about that journey. I honestly don't think that will ever not be surprising to me. And then, like you had said earlier, realizing how much the institutions in my life like shaped not only me academically, but also my identity and like my sense of self was like really, really impactful. It was unique for me being able to be in like two predominantly white institutions, but also like they transformed into this like place of cultural affirmation and reconnection. That is like very, very surprising to sort of reflect on.
What from today that you've said you want to hold on to?
Definitely what you asked me about what was surprised by. I don't even think I'm a shy person, but I think sometimes it's hard for me to really be as outgoing as my dad. I'm trying to get to that point. I second guess my actions because I'm like, oh my God, they're going to think this or they're going to think that. I'm definitely trying to stop doing that and really see the world as my oyster and as strangers, as friends that I haven't made yet. Also, I want to definitely hold on to me and my dad, how he raised me. It's just like so awesome. I just loved being raised by him. The feeling I get when I talk about that, I definitely want to hold on to.
Do you have to be as outgoing as him?
True. Maybe not setting this quota for the level of outgoingness, but I want to approach the world as he approaches it in the sense of he thinks that everyone is a potential friend. I definitely want to try to embrace that.
Here's what I noticed, Amelia. What you admire in your dad, the way he connects with anyone, no hesitation, no self doubt getting in the way. You may not see that. You already have a version of it. ADHD, learning Spanish, reclaiming your culture, 5 weeks alone in Puerto Rico, and now in Mexico City on your own. None of it stopped you. You moved toward it anyway. That ease you're reaching for with people, it's the same thing you've already been doing with everything life has put in front of you. So the apple really doesn't fall too far from the tree. And I guess to wrap up, the last question on meeting yourself where you are right now, what what are you most proud of about yourself?
Hmm. I think that I'm honestly most proud of like how I've like learned who I am in terms of an identity. It wasn't like always easy. Like I think that like that took courage, really devoting myself to like reconnecting culturally with like who I am. It's taken long. I still like don't know like the imperfect subjunctive tense in Spanish. Like I'll like be talking in Spanish and I'll be like, wait, like what am I supposed to say here? A second later, I'll be like, I was supposed to use the imperfect subjunctive. It's just like still a mess. But I think I'm being very brave and courageous just by continuing to try to connect and also just all that I've done to learn about my family and learn about who I am. That's something that I'm very, very proud of.
Well, thank you, Amelia.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Self Centered Living. Come back next week as we continue exploring what shapes us and what wants to emerge. Our music is by Ketsu. Information on our participants can be found in the show notes. You can find me at selfcenteredliving.com. Take care until then.